As a speaker and a Western woman, who, according to the Dalai Lama, by the way, is about to save the world, I have a huge responsibility to share this message. I saw the devil, and all I really saw was an angel in pain. And that's the truth of things. I don't care how big the drama is. I don't care how big the problem is. I don't care if we're talking about terrorism. We're talking about people who are suffering, and we need to find out why if we want to stop it.
Right, when you hear this noise, be o'clock. Very fortunate to have with us tonight Clarke, Bullied to Brilliant, author of Bullied to Brilliant amongst many things. How are you, Karen?
Good, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, fantastic.
And hey, Karen. Hey, Beanie.
How are you, Dave?
Hi, David.
Karen, you wouldn't have heard it. I actually played the intro, which is part of your video on there, and there's an exceptional line in there that says, "I've got a responsibility to get this message out to the world." And you talk about you looked at the devil and you saw an angel that was crying. That's a really powerful line. Can you talk us through that a little bit? What that message is and where that line come from?
That's my line.
Yeah.
The reason why I focus on that message is because ultimately through all the work that I've done, all the coaching, all the research, all the writing, everything that I've done has led me to believe and understand that people who are lashing out are in pain. Full stop, no exceptions. There's no unexplained behavior, let's put it like that. So and I'm talking from personal experience as well. I've had some fairly difficult, traumatic, upsetting experiences with some people who've been pretty confronting. However, regardless of the experiences that I've had or the experience that I'm aware of, I understand that behind that behavior is a story. And I always come from that point of view as a coach. If you're going to coach or if you're going to support people or you're going to help people walk out of wherever they are, you can't do that effectively if you only focus on the people that you like, or you only focus on the people whose stories resonate with you, or if you only focus on the good people. I have a real issue with good and bad people. You know, what we used to do is spend half an hour with a bunch of prisoners, and then you ask them what their childhood was like, and you will get a really good idea of how bad people come to be. It's not difficult. It's very, very simple to understand. So if you're going to unpack behavior, you really need to see the fact that essentially, intrinsically, human beings are good, and I am absolutely determined to pursue that idea and have not ever had to question it, ever once.
Yeah. Well, a lot of us don't realise how lucky we are, do we? I mean, it's a fine line between what you're talking about, someone that's sitting here with all the trappings that we've got, and then someone that's made a mistake that has ended up in like prison that you're talking about.
Yes, and it doesn't happen. It's very rare that it's an isolated incident. It's not like somebody it's not like a little boy at 5 years old is sitting there saying, "I'm going to dream of becoming a prisoner one day. That's what I want to be. That's what I see myself going, you know, or a lifetime criminal. You know, I've got this. You know, I dream. You know, that everybody dreams of. Everyone dreams big. Everyone starts out with an idea of who they are and what they can achieve and what's possible. And somewhere along the line, stories change, people's stories change. But I see always in front of me when I'm working with people, I always see potential. I see the potential that has always been there, will always be there, and I believe in that. So that's where that line comes from. I won't give up on people.
Very powerful message, that one. There's a great line that you use as well, and it's one of my favourites, and it is, "The problem's not the problem, Jack Sparrow. The problem is the way that you think about the problem." Talk us a little bit about how that relates to what you do, because I'm very interested to hear how this works for yourself.
Well, when somebody comes to me to help solve a problem, we'll spend a lot of time. I'll probably spend about 3 hours discussing the problem or where it's come from, and potentially, what's going on, what's happening, what it looks like, their take on it. But ultimately, I'm really waiting mostly for people to, it's almost like vent. Once you've vented, you've got the problem off your chest, then we can really look at your attitude to what's happened. We can really look at shifting perspective. Everything is about perspective. It's about the way you view things. So for one person, they would see a problem as being impossible and unresolvable. And for another person, it would be a mere blip on the radar. And I don't know if you've been watching the Jordan.
Yeah, I have.
So I'm really interested in that. I don't know anything about Michael Jordan. I never ever followed him. I was one of those few people that never really. I'm not really a sports watcher, and I know that's going to horrify probably the entire audience. I don't really pay a lot of attention to sports, but I'm really fascinated in behavior, and I'm fascinated in what made Michael Jordan become Michael Jordan. And if you listen closely, he stays singularly focused on his outcome, so to the detriment of all other things. Probably the downside of Michael Jordan is that he stayed singularly focused on the outcome, but that's how he got his result. He didn't see, and he talks about his father and how his father told him that challenges are your, I don't know how he worded it, but are your opportunities. They are the way. If you're given a challenge, you see him throughout the series. Every time he's given a challenge, it provokes a response in him that pushes him to further excellence. So he sees challenges almost. He gets excited about challenges. He sees them as a flag, as an opportunity. Whereas another person, most people, will see a challenge as being wrong. That shouldn't happen. But that is a perspective. It's just a perspective. Very difficult word to say quickly.
But that's having the work ethic as well. And there's a thing interview I saw this morning. They said it was his perspective, and some people probably didn't agree with him. But it's his take on how he felt and what he thought was going on at the time, and how he wanted to achieve, and he wanted to make everyone better around him.
Yes, and he explains as well how in his childhood, his brother and he were very competitive to the point he would break. And his brother said that if someone beat me, I would fight them. So he grew up with a very, very strong driver that would have either crushed him or made him stronger. He chose to use it to push his competitive spirit. That's what he chose to do with it. He could have very easily grown up as someone that said, I had an awful childhood. My brother was really mean, and I really didn't enjoy life as a result. And the reason why I'm doing what I'm doing is because my childhood was terrible. He could have very easily said that and felt justified. But it's perspective again.
How do you flip that switch then for someone? If you're working with someone, and how do you take them from, because it is, when they're in a dark place, it's a hard thing to do, is to flip that perspective and say, look, this is happening for a reason. I need to, what I'm going to learn out of this, what's the upside out of it? How do you flip that switch in their head, I suppose, that I know there's no magical cure, but what sort of process do you go through to try and do that?
Well, firstly, I disagree that it's a hard thing to do. I think it's easy. It's pretty much all I do. So no, it's not hard. It's not hard at all. What you do, basically, people have their perspective. So your perspective is what you have gathered throughout your lifetime. A large part, probably 80% of your perspective, is gathered in your childhood. Yep. Most people tend to sort of gather that up, get to a certain point, and then they sit with it. And they go, that's it. That's my perspective. That's my view on life. That's my take. That's how things are. This is it. It's black and white. I'm going to sit there. It's not true. It's a perspective. So my job as a coach is simply to deliver relentlessly alternative perspectives to the situation they're in. And I just continue on and on and on. I bang on until at some point something will click, or something will resonate, or something will make sense. And I don't know what's going to make sense. It's not my breakthrough, it's their breakthrough. But I just deliver all different views that I've accumulated over time. And I mean, I lived in Africa for 8 years, so at 15 years of age, I was already absorbing extremely different concepts, ideas, attitudes, beliefs, language, a new language. There's all this new information that came into me. So I feel really blessed that from 15, all of my perspectives got blown to smithereens. I lost everything that I normally would have referred to. So when somebody comes to see me now, I have a history of wildly different perspectives. You know, my family live in the south of France now. I've traveled all around the world. My husband's part Maori Fijian. We've got children. There are so many elements aside from all the work that I've done, all the research that come into that moment in that room, that I really challenge people to sit with their own perspective for long. There's just no way you can, because all you're lacking is information. That's it. You're just lacking information. We're really clever. Human beings are really clever. Once we have the information, we know what's right. We know what fits. We know what we can do. If we don't have the information, you can't do it.
Do you think the perspective comes from people that they hang around with and what they learn from off them as well sometimes?
Yeah, if that's what you've chosen. If you've chosen to hang around the same people, it might be a bit challenging to develop new ideas, new perspectives, new views of yourself. The thing probably the greatest takeaway I got from being moved from my home in the north of England. So I grew up in the north of England on a hill with a pony and 6 brothers and a very, very sort of narrow life experience. And then I got put in tropical West Africa with the same family, thankfully. But but still, I had to redefine myself and reimagine myself in a completely different culture. So I couldn't be that shy, quiet girl from the north of England in West Africa because she didn't fit. She didn't resonate with anybody around her. I couldn't tell the same jokes for a start. Nobody understood English, so that wasn't going to work. But I couldn't be me there because me didn't fit in. So I had to recreate myself. And when I eventually did that, I realized that human beings can adapt. They can change. You can stop being, well, I could. I stopped being the girl from the north of England and I became the girl from the north of England who lives in West Africa and speaks French and has, a diverse cultural group of friends. It was really, really different. It was a different person. But it's difficult to know that you're capable of that if you've grown up in the same town and are still with the same friends and have always gone to the same pub and have always eaten at the same restaurant and still have tea at 5 o'clock on Fridays. And, it's very, very difficult to imagine yourself as being able to recreate yourself if you've never seen it. So your perspective is limited.
How much does that environment change play on your perspective? I mean, you've just talked about there two completely different areas that you grew up in England to Africa. How much does that, and people, I believe people should push out of their comfort zone a lot more so that they are getting different perspectives and stuff that they're not really comfortable doing. How much does those different things, how much of a role has that played in the way that you coach?
Well, I think my background very much supports the way that I coach. So it's not it's no good me telling somebody a point of view if I haven't lived it or I haven't experienced it or I don't know what I'm saying. I'm just making it up. I mean, of course, I haven't lived every experience. So a lot of what I say comes from research. A lot of what I say comes from the studying philosophy, studying human behavior, studying spirituality. There's a lot of study goes into it, but my background, the fact that I have lived in lots of different countries, the fact that I have such a diversity of experience and had it so young, helps me support them. Very much helps me support because it supports what I'm trying to communicate. I can actually refer back to personal stories, personal instances. So that's why I'm probably good at communicating with people who are feeling bullied or intimidated, or even with people who are bullying, it's because I've lived the experience, so I can share my take on it. So, yes, I agree that people should stretch themselves always. You don't necessarily have to move town, by the way. You catch yourself by learning a new skill, or learning, or just shaking up your social life. Going to a new club, learning music, just stretching yourself. There's so many ways.
So,
Changing career. There's many ways. I'm sure David's got like tons of ideas about how to change yourself. I don't think you've stayed the same very much.
oh yes and no. I was going to say, so when did you get into the coaching stuff, and what got you into it, Karen?
I believe I'm now, in retrospect, I think I was a born coach. So I'm the only girl. I have 6 brothers. So I'm the only girl of 7 children.
Still do.
And, oh, hang on.
You're right. You go again.
Someone's calling me. Who's calling me? What is it?
They're probably trying to call get your book.
Told me to get off the line. What were we talking about? I lost.
I asked you like when you started the coaching thing and what got you into it.
Yeah, so I believe I really have played the role of mediator my whole life within my family, and and I was the girl, so I was the one that could talk about all that icky emotional stuff, make people uncomfortable. That was my job, was to speak of emotions, and yes, but I got really fascinated in it. I think actually when I flew for Qantas, I used to work for Qantas, and I flew with Qantas, and I ended up getting to know a lot of the crew, and realized that on most of my flights I was in our downtime in the galley, was talking through problems with everybody, and talking about relationships, and talking about what I'd just read, and talking about what I'd just heard, and I ended up really realizing that was my calling, was actually to talk to people about their feelings and their relationships and problem solving. I'm fascinated with that. So I think that's where I decided or knew that was something I wanted to do. I didn't get around to training in it until 2009. I had 3 children in the meantime, and that took a lot of my attention.
Yes, they certainly do. They're worth every minute, buck. Mate, you talk about as well. Another thing I picked up in one of your videos there was forgive the action rather than the person when there's been some sort of injustice or something like that against you. Can you speak to that a little bit about how people should use that to deal with the bullying or whatever it may be?
Yes, well, it's actually the other way
So the other way around. Yeah, that'd be
Yeah.
right. I'll get it back to front.
Yeah, forgive the
You
person.
know, dyslexic to you, Benny.
Everyone's mind just went. That doesn't make sense.
I've just made sure they're paying attention.
That's all right. I am paying attention. I always pay attention.
Lucky someone does.
Yeah, so essentially that buys back into the story that I was telling you, or my story. Everyone has a story of life, of how we see life. My story of life is that people are essentially good, and I refuse to be proven otherwise. I refuse to accept that people are not intrinsically good. I stay there. So if people have, and forgiveness, so forgiveness is a key. If you're going to do any personal growth and development, and you want to carry resentment around in your heart, or you won't get the result you want. We can't free ourselves of the burden of our past if we choose to hang on to resentment. We just can't. So in order to be free, and forgiveness is something you do for yourself. You don't do it for another person. That's made up. When you forgive someone, you're letting yourself off the hook. I don't have to be angry. I don't have to be sad. I don't have to carry the burden of this emotion with me anymore. Because, by the way, it doesn't hurt the other person. It has no effect on them whatsoever. So it's irrelevant to them whether you're angry or not. It doesn't do anything for you. I'm very logical and pragmatic as well. as well as I believe in forgiveness from a spiritual point of view or an emotional point of view or a physiological point of view. But if you really want to move in life, you must put the burden of your past down. It has to be put down. And part of that is forgiving people. So the act itself can be, and there are unforgivable acts. I'm not naive. I know, and it's very, very clear from the work that I do that there are unforgivable acts. But I don't believe there are unforgivable people. That doesn't mean that you have to spend time with that person. It doesn't mean that you have to resolve things with that person. It doesn't mean that you have to reconnect or have them close to you. But it does mean you have to let go of the burden of carrying that pain yourself, because that itself is crushing your soul.
Very powerful. There's a page on your website that talks about the gift of bullying. Can you speak to that for us, please? I found that really interesting.
Yes, so that's how you become the world's most unpopular bullying coach.
No one ever made a difference by being like everyone else.
My kids tell me that I'm a specialist in bullying because I'm really good at it. Yes. So bullying itself is a gift, and I know it's hard to swallow. I know it's not what we want to hear. I know it's not what we're told. I mean, literally everywhere you go, there's banners and it's ban bullying and against bullying and no more bullies and parades, and it's all very against. There's a lot of against, you see, and I have difficulty. I go and talk to kids in schools, and I'm standing there talking to kids in schools, and I get them to discuss bullying. What I get them to do, and this is probably the most powerful thing I do in schools, and I would love everyone to do it. It doesn't have to be me, it could be everyone. Yep. So you put up a whiteboard, and on the whiteboard you write on the left-hand column, you make two columns, left-hand column you write victim. And then you describe a victim, and you ask the room to describe a victim, and they will give you a bunch of words, mostly derogatory, but all to do with emotion, be afraid and weak and vulnerable and anxious, and sometimes they'll bring everything up. So like these are high school students normally, so they get really quite graphic. You run through all of those emotions. Then you put bully, and you say the same thing. I need you to describe to me a bully. What does a bully, what's a bully like? What do they do? How do you feel about bullies? And there'll be a whole bunch of really negative comments. But what you'll see as they write this happens every single time. The words angry, sad, hurt, anxious, fearful, weak, vulnerable, scared. It makes me like emotional even thinking about it. All these words come out, and then what I do is I map them across. So I circle all the ones that match for a victim and all the ones that match for a bully, and then I say you're talking about the same person. You're not talking about different people. You're talking about insecurity. You're talking about vulnerability. You're talking about people who are hurt and who are struggling with themselves. Now, the reason why we have a bully and a victim and an idea of the bad bully and the weak victim, which is the story that we tell ourselves, is because some people like me, tend to be quiet. We're quiet. We are gentle souls. We tend to be off with the fairies or in ourselves or in our own space. We're often creative. We're often, difficult to provoke. Let's say difficult to provoke to action. And then a bully in that sense will be someone who's outspoken, who lashes out, who speaks up, who tries to get their own way, who tries to dominate. Now, the way I describe it is a bully is a victim. A bully is a victim who's lashing out, and a victim is a bully who bullies themselves. But it's the same behavior, the same pattern. So if we stop trying to end bullying, because by the way, if you try and end bullying and you stand in front of a group of kids and you say, I want to end bullying, bullies are bad, bullying's bad, bullies are bad, it needs to stop, you need to have compassion in your heart and blah, 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 and all that, and it sounds great. But what about the bullies in the audience? They don't sit there thinking I'm a bully. They sit there thinking, my life sucks, I'm having an awful time, that kid's a jerk and I don't like them, and they're not thinking I'm a bully. They're thinking we're attacking them. That's someone else that's attacking me. That's someone else that's putting me down. That's someone else that's making me feel bad about myself. I don't need any of that. And that's not going to make me feel compassionate or kind. That's just going to make me feel more hostile, more rejected, more isolated. My point is, everybody needs help. And I say that. I said, you see these two people? They need your help. They need our help. They need this school to mobilize around them and take care of them. So when you see someone bullying, you need to try and either get someone to help them out, or if it's a friend of yours, try and help them out yourself. It depends. You know, kids are not really great at helping each other out, especially high school kids. Teenagers are really not.
Sure.
They're just not equipped, but you can still, you know, go and find someone, go to speak to the school counsellor, but make sure that the idea that there are bullies and victims in school, it's simply a flag that you've got some students that need attention. They need help. Mobilize, look after them, take care of them, all of them, and build them up, and you'll find bullying will disappear. You don't need any banners or any punishment. You just need to support and uplift the kids.
Man, that's a powerful message. Very love the way that the track that you go down with that. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's the same in workplaces too, I suppose, isn't it?
Yeah. Actually, that was a question I was just going to ask. Is I want to bully Dave for a minute. You got a workshop, don't you, dealing with difficult people? So I'm dealing with Dave all the time. So I need as much help as I can here.
What about me?
Can you
Did
talk?
you see what she said?
Can you talk us through a bit of what you do in the workshop as well?
Yeah, well, one of my favourite times I delivered this workshop, and this literally was my favourite time, was when Gympie Council invited me to come and deliver it to 100 of their council workers, the road workers. And that was the funniest experience for me. Great. It was really great because I am very loudly, I opened with the statement, today we're going to talk about love. And it was the best feeling. Oh my god, it made me so happy. And when I arrived there, like there's the car park and there's only white utes, like only all white utes, and there's tons of people outside smoking and like demographic. And that's me walking in with my, heels on. It was just so funny. The whole setup was so funny, but I really loved it. So the dealing with difficult people is designed to expand on what I'm talking about here. It's designed to change perspectives, to bring people out from a place of hostility and antagonism and into a place of compassion. I'm trying to pull people into a compassionate space where they can see problems or see behind problems. You want to be able to see behind the problem. Don't look at the problem. The problem is not the problem. The problem is your attitude to the problem. So you've got a guy that's behaving really badly at work, and I'll give you an example of this. So this did happen to me when I was flying. So when you fly on the aircraft, the crew normally pick positions. It may have changed now. At the time, people would pick positions, and the favourite position was up the front in the galley with the onboard manager, because it's nice. You're working up the front of the plane, and it's nice. It's a nice service, and it's much less hectic than down the back. And for this particular briefing, I was a little bit late, which is unusual. It's unusual as I was late. And then the positions had all been picked, but the galley position up the front with the manager was free. And I thought, that's strange. Didn't think anything of it. Got on the plane, started to do my checks. And the manager was really abrupt. She was barking at me and really tense. And it was really uncomfortable for me. I was surprised. And throughout the service, it was very much like this. And she went down the back for a while, and she came back up, and it was getting more and more tense. In the break, I went down the back, and the crew was standing there, and they all knew her. She was notorious. They didn't like her. There was a really bad vibe down the back, and everybody was antagonistic and hostile. And speaking of this onboard manager, I stood there for a while, and I thought, hang on a minute, this doesn't feel right. I went up the front. And I said to her, I don't know you, I've not met you before, but I'm just wondering, is everything okay? And she burst into tears. Now, that for me, and that isn't how it always works out, by the way, so don't expect all your workplace problems to resolve themselves if you say, are you okay? But it was a very big indicated to me that there is a story behind the story. And it was a big learning marker for me, because especially when you're dealing, if you're frontline customer service staff, you'll often have people coming up to you, being rude, being abrupt, being hostile, being ignorant, like turning away, ignoring you, dismissing you. There's a lot of that goes on. And throughout my career, whenever that happened, I would say in the back of my mind, something's going on for them. It doesn't matter whether it is or it isn't. Like I said, we all tell ourselves stories, but my story is always there is something going on for that person. I don't need to find out what it is. I don't need to heal them. I don't need to help them. That's not necessarily what is the appropriate course of action in that moment. But I will always put that idea in the back of my head. If they're behaving in that way, something is wrong, and I will leave it at that. I don't take it personally.
Cool. Now, you're doing a lot of work with this. I mean, it's not just the bullying side of it that you're dealing with. You're doing a lot of proactive stuff, particularly with your daughter and her career as well. I know Dave's got a few questions around that. Do you want to take us away with that, Dave?
Yeah, well, we're going to have to talk about the book at some stage too, but May is very similar to you, and obviously you've instead what you've learned into her as well. All three of your kids are quite good with that stuff, I think, aren't they?
I'm very lucky with my children. I'm very blessed. They're really kind people with big hearts, and I couldn't be more proud of my kids. They really have a lot of compassion for other people, and they have they have different strengths. They're very different. Oh my God!
Yeah, and they're all creative in some way, aren't they?
Yes, yeah. I couldn't get three more different personalities. It's hysterical getting them together, but yes, no, I'm really, really proud of the kids.
Tell people out there what May is up to, as well as how she's worked over the years with you with the bullying stuff and workshops and music, and how that helps and works in together as well with what you're doing.
Yeah, well, she's actually downstairs. I can hear it in the background. You can't hear it, it's faint, but she's downstairs rehearsing with Peter Coppers and her dad. They're rehearsing for Friday night, and it sounds lovely, by the way. It's really good. So Maya's always been musical from when she was really tiny, like really tiny, before she could talk. She's a tiny baby. I'll never forget, I went to kindergarten to pick up her brother Isaac, and I was holding her, and I said to the teacher, I said, listen to this, and then I said, Maya can sing, and I said to her, whatever it was, I can't remember the song. I said, sing Happy Birthday or whatever it was. There were three different songs. She could sing three different songs, not the words because she couldn't speak, but she could sing the song. And the teacher just about fell over. She said, that's not possible. It just doesn't happen. So she's always had music in her, always. There's been never any question that music was going to be her life. And the first time she ever set foot on a stage was, I can't remember, Kindy or whatever. They did a little show, and Maya came running out to the centre and literally went, ta-da! Like, yeah, okay, I guess we're on a bit of a journey here. But I suppose being a coach must have had an impact along the way. It's very difficult for me to actually understand that, though, for myself, because I don't consider what I do coaching. I consider what I do living and in speaking. So it's through our whole life. I never stop coaching. I'm always thinking about something I've read or something, another way of looking at things. I'm always thinking about empowerment and how to empower yourself. So that's our home life. Our normal life is one where there is a attention to language, how we speak to each other, how you speak about yourself. So all of that must have overlaid Maya's natural talent and her natural propensity to move towards music. So she's a talented and driven. She is so driven. She loves music. She just loves her work and her craft. She loves theatre as well. She loves performing. She just has that spark. I don't know that I don't have to do anything with that. I've literally been hanging on to Maya and running around all these places that she's needed to go as a child. I have never pushed her once, never. I just run behind and pay for things. That's kind of been my job.
has she worked in with your workshops and her music and stuff? Tell us a bit about all that sort of stuff, because it was a song she recorded at a very young age, which you've used.
Yes. Well, actually, to be honest, so on the cover of my book, I'll show you. I'll do a bit of a book thing. On the cover of my book is Elias, our youngest, and that was a photo that was taken when he was 10 years old. And this is a question. You're going to look at the cover. You're going to tell me, not you, David, you're free from it, sorry. Tell me if he's walking either towards or away from the camera. So that's a question.
I'm going to go with away.
Well, I'm not going to tell you. I'm going to keep it a secret.
I think I know, but I've heard it from you, so I've got an advantage.
Yes, so he's on the cover of the book, and then Maya has been joining me in workshops, playing some of her songs. So for a while, I've been playing her song "Bye Bye Bully" at my workshops, because when I was launching my book, she simultaneously was going through some challenges at school, and it was actually unrelated. She didn't write the song to coincide with my work, but she had some really tough experiences and wrote the song "Bye Bye Bully." And when she was having her guitar lessons, Peter, who is now downstairs, this is all coming around circle, suggested she record it. So, which we thought was a lovely idea. So we recorded the song, and as it turned out, when it was ready, it was close to the release of my book. So I brought her song in as part of the release of my book. And now she comes and performs at my workshops, and also delivers her message of empowerment and her message of how to find confidence and self-esteem as a teenager, and how to discover your own power. Because, of course, she has her own take on it. It's not my take. My take's based on my experience and my background. So Maya has developed her own take on how to find your own center in the face of challenges. And that's really interesting to listen to as well. So as well as all her musical work now, she also at times joins in with me, not all the time.
And just so we can piece this together for the listeners, and how knowing different people can help. So in this whole thing, I've known Peter for a long, long time, worked with him with music, and Karen did an interview with Matt Collins, who Beanie knows, which is how I met Beanie, and how I met Karen, and then was through doing an event with Matt with Pete, which Peter was performing at and talking at, as a whole different circles that all weave into each other. So it shows you how important that whole engaging and good people come across each other and end up working together as well.
Yes, it absolutely. It's like 6 degrees of separation, isn't it? There's all these coincidences that bring us into proximity with each other. Yes, and I don't underestimate the power of synchronicity at all. And in fact, I think about
it's very important.
Yeah, I think a number of years ago I did a workshop and you were there, Beanie, because I had you in my contacts when we connected. So, and I've got a feeling it was that you were part of a workshop, a social media workshop, years and years ago. Though.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, only infinite.
Oh, there we go. Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny how those things come around, isn't it?
Well, it all works back together, you know.
Yeah. Your favourite chapter from the book? Sorry, go, Dave.
Well, that's the power of collaboration and synchronicity as well, you know.
Certainly is.
Yes.
Just on the book, what's your favourite chapter? What's the thing that people come and when they read it, they come back to and speak to you that stands out, that has the biggest impact? Is there one thing in particular, or is it a number of things?
Well, the book is really it's like a personal empowerment guide. So you're saying how do I help people, change perspective, or reframing is the other way of looking at it. How do you reframe a problem to see it from a different point of view? Well, it's piece by piece. So I think the book doesn't have one message. It has lots and lots of messages that are overlaid. And it depends on where you're coming from as to your perspective. So some people will read it to help their kids, and then it helps themselves. They suddenly see, oh, that's for me. I had one woman who read my book, and she sent me a message, and she said, "What have you done to me?" She said, "I've gone ahead and I've she was about to quit her job, so I've gone back to my job, and I'm, implementing some of the things you've suggested, and it's all turned around, and I don't believe it. I don't know what you've done. I don't know how you've done it. I haven't done anything. I've just fed people with more information. We're lacking in information. Like I said, the cultural approach to dominance-based relationships or abusive relationships even is to really just condemn it. You condemn it and you become angry and hostile, and that's the answer. But it's not the answer, because if you end up with anger and hostility, you're still in a problem. And if you're angry with bullies, you become a bully yourself. You can't be angry with bullies and not be a bully. You can't all take up arms against bullies and not be a bully. So the message in the book is change your perspective. That's the best part, is change your perspective. You don't have to agree with me, and you don't have to adopt my perspective, but change your perspective. Soften it a bit. Bring other layers in. So the book, it's almost like not a mismatch, because it's very well planned, but it has lots of different elements that will appeal to different people. There's a chapter on jealousy, and I read that out the other day. There's a chapter on the importance of being able to be alone and not be lonely. That being aloneness is a power. It's a superpower. If you can be happy in your own skin, you can be happy when you're alone. No one can take that away from you. If you can empower yourself to the point where your inner world is so stable and so deeply embedded in your knowledge of how to find true happiness, and I don't mean happiness in material wealth or I don't know, whatever it is, or people outside of yourself, but true happiness, you're unshakable, you're unstoppable. So you can be alone and be happy. You be in a group and you be happy. You be at work and you'll be happy. You be doing nothing, you'll be happy. Like, if you can find that space, there you go. That's it. You're set. Now you get creative. That's when the cool stuff really starts to happen.
Where do people get hold of the book, Karen? Because people are going to want to reach out and get hold of it. I've got a link that I'm showing here. Tell them how to get hold of it.
Well, there are two ways. You can go to Amazon. There's an ebook on Amazon, or Kindle version or whatever. And there you can buy it. If you're overseas, you can buy it on Amazon. And if you want to, in Australia, if you want a signed copy, you go to my website, and then you can order directly from the website and just put a note to me, tell me if you'd like a signed copy. But apart from that, it's available on
You need to get this book out to more people. It took you a long time to put together. I know through our conversations, I've heard how much work and effort and time you put into it. Yes. So you need to get it out to more people.
Yeah, it took me about 4.5 years to write it. I was actually in the middle of some personal crises at the time, and some really quite personal, challenging, difficult relationships at the time. So through the story, I'm speaking as well, and I don't speak about it. It's not a story about my personal experience. It's a story about relationships and conflict. But within the story, there are elements of my story that are in there that you won't know it's my story, or elements of myself, the feelings when I'm describing how it feels to be bullied, or how it feels to be betrayed at a very deep personal level. All of those feelings that are in there are real. It's a book that's written from the heart, and I've been very, very specific about the quotes that I've chosen and the way I've presented the book to deliver my message as clearly as possible. And it's not my message. I know it's not my message. I like I said, you're going to study and read and bring philosophies. These are other people's messages. The book's based on the teachings of Mahatma Gandhi, which is non-violent resistance. So I'm not even saying step back or step away. I'm just saying choose another method. If you're going to resist someone with love and compassion. And that can be really solid and really strong. It's not weakness, it's great strength. And sometimes the strongest thing you can do is walk away. Sometimes it takes a lot of strength to walk away, because it's in the best interest of everybody. And sometimes you need to stand firm because it's in the best interest of everybody. But you're looking for real strength that has integrity and compassion and kindness and tolerance all intertwined in it. And I think one of the things that upsets me the most about the culture that we live in at the moment is that we have a culture of hostility. We have a culture, even our leaders, and I will not mention any names, but we have a culture of leaders who will diminish or ridicule or hurt or isolate or condemn without a second thought. And I find that extremely disappointing that we have gone through so much. We've gone through wars. We've gone through so many trials and tribulations. We've had so many great spiritual leaders, so many stories to draw upon, such great philosophy, the great architecture of the human species, and the best we can come up with is hostility. I find that extremely disappointing.
I'm hearing hostile here a lot.
We can do better than that. We can. We can put up the banner of love, and I'm determined that we put up a banner of love and that we adhere to that, because our values speak of it. Our values as a culture speak of the desire to be kind. We actually have demonstrated it. So come on, let's do it.
Yeah. Sorry, go, Dave.
I was just going to say, here's something for you, Karen. With a big thing that we all use is social media now. And what's your thoughts on that? How best to use it? Because there is a lot of bullying online, but there's a lot of positive stuff on there too.
Yes. Well, the best thing is, and this has been my guidance, advice to my kids, is as soon as somebody becomes threatening or hostile, you block and delete. Like, we don't need that. It's just the same as if you
walk away.
Don't hang out with them. Don't hang out with them. You've got to ask yourself the question: why do you need that person in your space? Be mindful. If you're down to one good friend, good. You've got one good friend. If you haven't got one good friend and you're okay with yourself, good. Be good with yourself, because it won't last forever. Whatever kind of isolation you're in will end. Human beings are extremely gregarious. We always end up hooking up with other people and meeting other people and engaging with other people. If the people that you're with right now are toxic and hostile, just don't. Just don't. You're not in alignment with each other. This isn't your time. Just find some other people to hang out with, or find your own space and find an activity or a passion or an art or something that you like to do. Hell, the worst comes to the worst, watch Netflix.
The Last Dance. It's awesome. Just going back to what you're saying on leadership there, and it's important that you keep pushing on with this, Karen. I'm going to ask you in a second, what's the plan? What do you got coming up next? Because you look at this whole COVID thing, right? The countries that have dealt with and shone above everyone else have one thing in common: they have female leaders. That empathy that's come through, I've seen what they've done in New Zealand and what they've done overseas as well. There is, we really need to push for that change, and what you were talking about before, the bullying, the old boys club, and all the rest of the bullshit that goes with it needs to, as you said, we can't fight against it, but we need to be pushing for more of the empathy side of things. Well, that's my take on it anyway. So what is next for Karen Clarke? Where are you headed next, Karen?
Well, at the moment, I'm working a couple of days a week in Nambour. It's a community service that's being offered there in Nambour by the Catholic Church. Actually, is offering a service for families. The Catholic Church and St John's School are providing support for local families, and I'm so happy to be part of that. So that's something that I'm doing now. And I'm also coaching, of course. And then, it's all a matter of time. But I love my book to get into more hands. I love to deliver workshops and presentations. I love to share any message of empowerment. I love to support Maya and be there for her in her music. And I love her participating as well and joining me in my work. Who knows? It's really interesting. It's sort of like life seems to have picked me up and put me on a bit of a role, and I don't really know where it's heading. I'm sort of seeing who comes in, who's interested, and who's aligned with this kind of thinking. I agree that the female energy, and you don't have to be a woman to have female energy, by the way. Feminine energy, rather, is profoundly needed in this world. We're tired of bullying and abusive people. We're tired of the dominance-based behaviours. We're tired of leaders who think they have to tell and they don't listen. We're tired of it. I'm tired of it. I'm tired of people assuming that that's a good way to go about life. It isn't. It doesn't work. It creates resentment or blind devotion, which is just as bad. It really need to be empowered. We need to trust ourselves, believe in ourselves, and we need to figure out how to be kinder. The good thing about the COVID is it's actually, as well as it has increased a lot of conflicts in families and there's a lot of breakups as a result, it's also pushed people close together. And a lot of people I'm speaking to are saying they really enjoyed actually having some time to see each other and speak to each other and remember what it's like to know each other. So, you know, we need intimacy. We need real conversations, real people. We need to be able to relate. So in any way that I can help people do that, I'm there. I'll show up. I just show up all the time.
I've heard rumours there's an audio book going to come soon too.
Yes, I know. I heard you were going to fund it.
What about a second book?
Oh, a second.
Yeah, well, funny you talk about a second book, hey?
Yeah, I'd love to write. I really would love to write a book. That would be brilliant. Yeah, I love writing.
Another book, you mean? Not a book.
No, I'd love to. I'd love to do a rewrite of this one as well. I'd like to, you know, I love writing. I love playing around with words. It's one of my favorite pastimes. And one of the best parts of coaching for me is I get to write everything down. I'm coaching people, I'm writing, I'm actually using a pen. I love using a pen. It's nice. I'm back to basics. A notepad and pen. It's heaven.
The other thing you haven't sort of mentioned with the coaching is that you do a lot of online coaching with people around the world. It's not always face-to-face. Like, what's the difference from doing it online face-to-face? Is there any, or is it the same?
No, not really. As long as the connection's good, yeah, it's just as effective. It's, you know, I'm coaching people around the world, which I also love because that's great. You get to get other people's perspectives and stories. You know, I'm really, I do love online coaching as well. There's only so many people in my direct environment as well. Not everybody's on the Sunshine Coast.
And the good people. Any last words of wisdom, Karen, that you want to get out for us before we start to wrap up?
So my last words of wisdom would be, don't lose heart. I know it sounds a bit dark and dire, but be mindful of what you watch on television. Be mindful of who you speak to. Take care of your environment. Take care of your body. Take care of each other. And let COVID-19 be a reminder of the importance of relationships, and that if we are going to not just survive but thrive, we need to do some changing. So have a look at what you can change to make this world a better place, and I'm there. I am absolutely 100% behind you. I think it's the best.
All right. Thank you very much for your time, Karen. All those links.
Yeah, thank you.
I'll put in the comments down below. Anyone can check those. You've got there's the coaching stuff in there. Speaking, you want to book Karen to speak. I've got the book link in there as well. As you can see, you can't actually see it, Karen, but I've had sitting in front of you there. From bullytobrilliant.com. Head across there. There's a ton of information on there as well. Some really great videos sitting on the site there from Karen's keynotes. Get across. I encourage you to get across and check that out. Have a look. Thanks again, Karen. Thanks, Dave.
Thanks, Beanie.
That's
Thanks,
my
Karen.
pleasure. Thanks for inviting me on. It's good to see you.
Great to have you on. I will kill a live now, but we'll still be here because I'm going to play an outro. So we'll still be sitting on Skype, but we'll be gone from the live. Okay, speak soon.
As a speaker and a Western woman who, according to the Dalai Lama, by the way, is about to save the world, I have a huge responsibility to share this message. I saw the devil, and all I really saw was an angel in pain. And that's the truth of things. I don't care how big the drama is. I don't care how big the problem is. I don't care if we're talking about terrorism. We're talking about people who are suffering, and we need to find out why if we want to stop it.
Now the problem, as Jack Sparrow said, is not the problem. The problem is your attitude to the problem. It's the resistance. The pain is in the resistance.
Bullying is not the problem. Our culture is not the problem. It's our ability to say no to bullying, dominant and abusive and controlling behaviours. The problem is our inability to say no. Our inability to make our own needs heard. That's your problem. That's why I don't want to end bullying. I don't want to end bullying. I want to end the shame that exists around bullying. And I want to end a state of victimhood. You can't climb a mountain if it's not there. I'm not opposed to bullying at all. I'm not opposed to bullies. In fact, as far as I'm concerned, a bully is someone who externalizes their pain and a victim is someone who internalizes their pain. They work together as a team to create the perfect opportunity for them both to grow.
If someone's going to waste time hurting you, they're coming from a place of pain. I don't care what that place of pain is when I'm dealing with them at the time, normally because I'm annoyed. But the truth is, they're coming from a place of pain. So just forgive that. That person isn't operating at full capacity. If it's your boss, forgive that and do something about it. The thing about this moment in time for me is that I felt a need to create burning desire. I had to get this book out into the world. As loving human beings, and we are able to talk about the decisions that we're making as loving human beings, whatever philosophy or approach you take, it's essential that we come from the point of love if we are to